Hey, today we are with Sara Sabin Alger, a four-time letter winner at DePauw University, all conference honors as a junior and senior, and earned 3 conference titles, was the team and conference MVP and the team's most valuable defender as a senior, third team All Great Lakes region in 1996, first team in 1997, led the Tigers to the first ever appearance in the NCAA championships, and now a member of the DePauw University Hall of Fame. Sara, welcome and congratulations.
Thank you so much. When you say all those things, I forget that I did that.
Yeah, it took a long time. That was a pretty good resume. So with a resume that impressive, did you have the feeling that this day was going to be here at some point?
It was pure shock. I heard, as you know, with the coronavirus, we've had, this is a little elongated term to be entered in the Hall of Fame. So it was last January in 2020. I had been on campus the previous October to celebrate the life of our past coach, John Carter. And I had a conversation with Coach Cotton, who was the men's coach when I was there, as well as then, as you know, the athletic director. And I had told him, hey, I keep asking DePauw, what else can I do? I want to help, if it's helping recruit players or students or whatever, I just want to help. And in January, he called me up and he said, hey, it's Coach Cotton, and I wanted to check you're still in Milwaukee, right? And I was like, yeah. And here I thought he was going to ask me to go watch some star player or something and give some feedback. And he said, I need you to sit down. And I'm like, okay. And he said, I just wanted to be the first one to tell you that, you're going to be inducted into the Athletic Hall of Fame. And my first word was, what? And I really was not expecting it, because when I was there the previous fall, we were sort of joking about it. And I really didn't think that it was going to be me. So we had a really great conversation. And I asked him, how did this happen? Because John had been passed already for 2 years, and who would have nominated me? And he explained the process, which was really interesting. I hadn't really known the process. So to know that in my playing years, John thought I was Hall of Fame material was just really eye-opening to know that coaches at DePauw really need to recognize talent up front and know that this person could someday, be the great ones for the university. So.
Yeah, well, after 2.5+ decades at DePauw, he knew what talent was. So it was good that he saw that. So you get this information, you understand maybe understand and can digest the size of it. Who's the first person you told?
I called my mom. My mom was not really an athlete, but she was one of those people that was there in the rain and the wind and the snow, because remember, I'm from Wisconsin, and she supported my soccer, through all my years, starting at 5 years old all the way up. And I called her and said, we need to go back to Greencastle, because I'm going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And so she was so excited, for me, and just again, didn't understand how this could happen all these years later.
Well, that's so cool that, that's some validation for all of the clubs, the camps, the weekends on the road, the tournaments and stuff, that you got to share that with your mom. So here in this first chapter, I want to talk about your time before DePauw. You mentioned you come from Wisconsin. Is that where you were born and raised? And tell me a little bit about your family and your childhood.
Sure. I was born and raised in Wisconsin. I grew up in Wauwatosa, which is a suburb of Milwaukee. My parents divorced when I was 3 years old. And so it was always my mom, my sister, and myself. My sister is about 2 years older than me, 2 years older in school. And, my dad, he passed away a little over a year ago. So he actually did not know that this was occurring. But nonetheless, he also was there to come to games every once in a while too, and even was able to make some in Greencastle. But really, a lot of my memories are the three of us, my mom, my sister, and myself. I remember, most people remember me always with a soccer ball starting out. Even, when I was younger, 3, 4 years old, started playing when I was 5. Begged my mom to sign me up for rec leagues, back in the day, before they really had a lot of competitive soccer for girls. But I started out just playing in rec leagues and made competitive teams, played for the Olympic Development Program for Wisconsin for 6 years, played in high school, obviously, to the point where before I went to college, I was playing 11 months out of the year. So in Wisconsin, that means we're playing indoors for 6 of those months.
Yeah, so you mentioned that there wasn't as extensive of women's soccer as there is now. So you're looking at like the early 1980s. Do you remember how you got introduced to the game?
I really don't. I just remember I was a big tomboy. So I just really remember always being outside. It's funny, my kids right now are always, on electronics or playing with their friends, talking, on FaceTime or something like that. And we didn't have that, right? You always had to like go outside, don't come back until the street lights come on, that kind of thing. So I was always outside. I always had a ball. I played with the boys at recess at school instead of with the girls on the monkey bars. I just was always surrounded, with sport, and soccer was just one of those things that I took a liking to, and I was good at. So it was something I continued.
You pluralized sports. Were there other sports in your childhood, or were you locked in on soccer and that was it?
I played volleyball my freshman year in high school along with basketball and soccer. Well, that lasted a year, and then I really wanted to get more involved in soccer, so I could not commit to volleyball, so I quit. I played basketball through my junior year, and by my senior year, I was like, I'm still playing soccer all the time. And while I excelled in some of these other sports, I didn't have the same level of commitment, I don't think. And I don't know if it was because I wasn't involved in a club aspect, but, I just, when I look back in all of my memories, most of them are, with my soccer teammates, which ended up being my best friends in life. If it was in high school or college, that's just for me where memories were made.
So when you locked in on soccer for a few reasons, was there something in the game itself? Was it part of that camaraderie that you talked about with the team, that you just had a bunch of good teammates and so you gravitated there? Was it a coach? Was there a reason? Can you put your finger on why soccer was the one that won in the end?
I think it was all of those things that you mentioned. There's a book that was written about how soccer is just a metaphor for life. And I know it's sort of cliche, but it's so true. I think sport is a metaphor for life. There's so much that I learned inside the white lines, even as a young player, that I ended up really taking all those skills and transferring them into life. There are people on the field that you just don't like, but you don't have to be friends with them. You have to figure out how to work with them, how to be a team, how to do what's best for the team, and maximize your skills, how to lead, all those different types of things. I think because my mom was a single mom and she sometimes worked 2 or 3 jobs to raise my sister and myself, we were always looking for things to do, and we're always looking for coaches and mentors, those adult figures that could help us. And my high school coach, actually, he was my coach for 6 years. He was my ODP coach when I was in middle school, and then I went to high school and played varsity for 4 years. So, that was somebody that was a constant in my life for those 6 years. I have another coach who I love very dearly, and she was my club coach for a couple of years. And she's the one that taught me about the wholeness of being an athlete, not just the physical aspects of it, but you need to take care of your body. You need to sleep. You need to, I was one of those kids that would drink like soda for days. And then after she gave us a little nutrition lesson, literally it was the last time I drank soda regularly ever. I mean, now I have soda maybe, maybe once every couple months or something. So looking at nutrition and those types of things. So I learned a lot from these coaches and my teammates. I had some of the best teammates that taught me really tough lessons because they loved me. Some taught me tough lessons because, we didn't understand each other as people, but as players, we got along. So, I can't put my one finger on it, but I don't know. The other thing about soccer that I really like, and I don't necessarily feel this way about every other game I've ever played, but I feel like in soccer, there's so many opportunities to make decisions on your own and learn from them. And so, again, not to be cliche about soccer is life, but I really learned a lot from that and looking at how my decisions on the field affected my teammates on the field, that I had to make them run further or run faster or get tied up with the defender that they wouldn't have had to had I played the ball on the other side. Simple things like that really rolled into the rest of life.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, adversity is a big part of that too, and dealing with adversity. And, when you were 10, you went through a lot of adversity and were in the hospital for a few months. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I was 9 years old and I was just a kid. I was a fourth grader having fun, and I was having just strange fever spikes and just random pains in my body. And my mom would call the doctor and say, something's wrong with Sarah. She's got a fever. We go to the doctor, and of course, nothing's wrong with me. And that happened for a couple months. And one day, I was at my little brownie class. I was a brownie, and in the Girl Scout system. And my troop leader was like, "Oh my gosh, Sarah's burning up, and this is horrible, and whatnot." And called my mom. My mom rushed me to the doctor, and they admitted me into the hospital immediately. They didn't really know what was wrong with me other than I had crazy temperatures, 104, 105, 106-degree fevers with random pains. I just remember my elbow hurting really bad. And why does your elbow hurt? You're a 9-year-old, what'd you do? You're usually pretty nimble and flexible and whatnot. And so, I was there for quite some time until they had to bring in a few specialists actually. I had lots of spinal taps and blood tests, and to this day I am fearful of needles. But they found out that I had systemic juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. So it's a form of juvenile RA, but systemic in the sense that the fluid and things that were attacking my joints were also attacking my vital organs. The funny thing is I was playing soccer. I love soccer. I wanted to be this kid, and the rheumatologist said, you can't play soccer. You are not a normal kid. This is going to be bad for your joints. And again, this is back in the 80s before they knew more. Now activity is good for RA, but I said, okay, I'll make you a deal. I'll be the goalkeeper because, when you're in U10 and U12, the goalie just kind of stands in the back and picks the dandelions, right? And so over time, I actually became a really good goalkeeper. And my first couple years in ODP were as a goalkeeper. So I went to the regional camp and, missed the full game by one player. I was number 5 instead of 4. So I didn't make it that far, but to be able to play for the state, for a couple of years as a goalkeeper was great. But by the time I got to high school and you get a little bit more active and you're diving and you're landing on your shoulder and you're landing on your hips and things like that is actually a little bit more tough on your joints than running up and down a field. And I remember my doctor saying, if you keep playing, you are not going to be able to walk by the time you're 25.
So when you go through this, you're 9, 10 years old, you're unbelievably active, and now you're in a hospital. How does, as a kid who wants to be out playing, how do you process that? How do you keep yourself occupied?
I mean, it was hard. There were days that, I literally couldn't move and my joints were so swollen and I just literally couldn't move. So I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just, I remember I had Doc, that was my heart machine. I was all hooked up to my leads, and I had Dopey, which was my IV that I hated because they had to change it every 3 days. And it was just horrible. The hardest thing was coming back because I was teased a lot at school. I missed the whole, 3 months of 4th grade. When you think about that, that's like, long division and chapter book reading and those types of things. And I had kids that teased me and called me sicko, and, they didn't really understand you know, what had happened to me or what I could do now that I was this really frail and fragile person. And I didn't, although I knew that there was something really wrong with me, I didn't know what my capabilities were yet. And so I was going to scrap around and do what I could do until somebody told me not to. And so eventually I found my way.
So getting back to taking those kind of lessons and putting them on the field, because that's a big challenge for a kid to overcome. When did you know you had it, or that there was something different about you on the field? Because sometimes it sneaks up on athletes, and sometimes the game is just really fun because it comes easy, and sometimes it's a surprise, and then all of a sudden there's this one defining moment where they're like, maybe I have a future in this.
That's a really great question. I think there was a couple moments of time, because I think there was like, hey, I'm good at this. And then I think there were other times where it's like, no, I'm really good at this. And I think the first time I felt like I was good was when I made the ODP team, my first time, which I think was probably in 7th or 8th grade, maybe. But that was the first time, because I thought, oh my gosh, I am playing with the best people in my age group around the state of Wisconsin, you know, and that was a difficult task to make. And then I think when I went to high school and I did make the varsity team my freshman year, to say, okay, I am good. I think when I went to DePauw, I knew that I was good. Our class, my class, was the first truly like whole class that was recruited. But to know that I went to play for the Indiana Blaze, and after that I played for the Minnesota Lightning, and I was playing with national team players who were my teammates. And you know, we had one of our teammates was from Sweden and played for the Swedish national team. You know, I mean, just playing with some amazing players, saying, hey, I'm on their team. I'm as, you know, I'm maybe not as good as them. Maybe I'm not going to make the national team, but to know that, you know, we're sharing the same, you know, piece of turf was just one of those things, saying that, yeah, this is an experience of a lifetime.
Yes, you talk about the national team, and that was pretty much it for women's soccer, in that, and it wasn't visible. You couldn't see games. It was not, you know, when you were growing up, it was not like it is now. There were no women's pro leagues. There wasn't the WNBA. So as this decorated athlete growing up, what are your goals? What do you aspire to? Or is the thought of doing something athletically out of reach because it's not visible and it's not tangible anywhere?
You know, part of the Olympic development program is to find those players that can play on that international level. You know, it's building, you know, that national team. And so being part of that program, you know, throughout my middle school and high school years was phenomenal. You know, I never made it outside the region, but to know that I was sitting there with, you know, girls with the same aspirations as myself was great. You know, I think in high school it was like, oh, I want that scholarship, you know, and I did have scholarship offers at D1 and D2 schools, and I chose DePauw. You know, I mean, what better commercial for DePauw is that? You know, I didn't want to go to Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I'm from. I wanted to get out of the city, you know. I didn't want to go to a D2 school in Missouri because 94% of their graduates were pre-engineering, and I don't get physics. So that wasn't going to be good for me, you know? So, you know, having those opportunities and knowing that I was good enough to play D1 was great. But knowing that I chose a school where I thought was going to be best for me, for my education, was even better. You know, I think that, you know, when we're trying to find what that next thing is for us, you know, once I got to DePauw, it was, okay, I want to be DePauw's, you know, first All-American, you know, women's soccer player. Well, that didn't happen. But, you know, that's where I was going for. And what we had to do was we had to get out of our conference. We had to get out of our region. We had to get to the national tournament. You know, I'm sure you know Brian Jaworski. You know, he was the assistant men's coach when I was there. And although it was hard to hear, but I know it was a compliment from him. And if you know Jaws, compliments don't come very easily. And I remember when we lost in the first round of the national tournament that we hosted at home, we lost against Denison 2-0. That is the only soccer game I've played in my entire life where I actually cried. And Jaws came up to me and he said, you played great. You're a phenomenal player. He said, if you would have played one more game, if you would have gotten out of this bracket, you would have been our first All-American. And for me, of course, I'm like, oh, just dig the knife in, but for Jaws, that was his compliment to me, and I appreciated that. And after that, it was over, playing for the Indiana Blaze was a big deal when you talk about level of play, because that was like the women's league then, the W League. It was a semi-pro league. It was pretty amazing. It was an exhibitionary year, so it was a little challenging with some of the pieces of, normal team life. But nonetheless, we got through it. And I really thought about going back after I graduated, and I didn't. I moved to Minnesota. And while I was there, I became friends with players at the Minnesota Thunder, which is their A-League up there. And they came to me and said, hey, we're starting the exhibitionary team for women up here for the W League if you want. I'm like, sure, I've done that before. So I played for the Lightning for, for one season. And then I left. I moved back to Milwaukee. And I remember my grandparents, my grandma's husband, I guess my step-grandpa, who was in my life for a very long time, was always saying to me, like, I don't know why you're bothering with the soccer stuff. I don't know what you're going to get out of it. You're never going to be and so I ended up telling him, like, hey, I played at the highest possible level that you can play at in this country other than on the national team, which, not a lot of people could say, in 1998. So that was fun. And since then, I don't know. I don't have a lot of soccer in my life, so I don't have those aspirations of what's that top thing for me anymore related to soccer. It's other things. It's how do I continue to be the best I can be and show up every day.
Yeah, you may think soccer's not still in your life, but there's a soccer ball right behind you. I see. Soccer's still a part of your life. So that was a good transition into this next chapter, your life at DePauw. By the way, Jaws and I were teammates, so I know exactly what you're talking about. So you come off a state championship, you're moving up in the ODP program, you walk away from Division I, Division II scholarships to come to DePauw University, a Division III school. Did you think, okay, this is going to be easy, I'm going to come in and be a starter? Were you intimidated by it? And how did that first season and that start go?
It was really difficult when we got there. John sent us all this. Actually, I dug it out a couple months ago. I just moved from Wisconsin to Texas, and as I was packing, I found all this stuff about DePauw, and I had my little DePauw box, and I had all these like training schedules from John and all the stuff we're supposed to do. And I just remember training so hard before I got there, and then we get there for preseason. We were there like 2 weeks before school actually started. And I just remember being in the best shape of my life and, and whatever. In all my time of playing, I have started every single game I ever played in. And then our first game came and I was sitting on the bench and I couldn't believe it. And so I went in 10 minutes into the game and I played the rest of the game. And that was how it worked for about 6 games. I ended up playing 80 minutes, but I didn't start. And for me, I was like, I should be starting. Why am I not starting? And so, but it was a really eye opener for me, because for me, I was like, hey, I'm here to play soccer. Let's go. And to realize that that's not what everyone else's goal on the team is. They all want to get to the national championship, but they have a different way to go about it. And it's not the way that I wanted to approach it. And that was, again, how do you ebb and flow and find the flexibility so you can work together as a team and get to that same goal, even though you don't have the same path. So it was hard.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And, you mentioned it, and we've talked about a couple of these things, your journey from a good team to taking it to the first national tournament. And then, the end, that final game. And you mentioned it's the first time you've ever cried on the field. One of the things I think is so difficult for athletes is we kind of die two deaths, our natural one at the end of our lives. But as athletes, we so often define ourselves by who we are on the field, and then it just comes crashing to a halt. So when that moment happens, you're sitting there in that time, and the season has ended, your playing career, you assume, has ended, but you've never had an end to it before. So how do you process that? What is the thought going through your head as you start returning to being a normal campus, a normal student?
Now, interestingly enough, earlier in my senior year, I actually quit for a week. I remember telling myself, the second I'm not having fun playing soccer, I'm gonna hang up my boots and be done. And we were at a game, and it was at Wittenberg, and it was a horrible game. Nobody's listening to anyone. Everyone's just doing their own thing, just like long balling it, all these things. And I remember at halftime, I was like, I'm done. And I went to the end of the bench and I took off my shoes and I was like, I'm done. And John was like, get back in there. And I was like, my shoes are off. I don't have enough time to tie my shoes. You go on, you put somebody else in, And Sarah Miller, who is also a Hall of Famer, was our assistant coach at the time. She was a GA, and she came over and she was like so disappointed in me. And, she's like, Sabin, she's like, what are you doing? Why are you leaving your team when they need you? I'm like, if they don't care about me, they're not listening to me. Nobody's doing what I say, because I was the central defender where, I'm the quarterback. Nobody was listening. And she was like, you're going to regret this. You put your shoes back on and you get out there. You're going to, she was trying it. And I was like, no, I'm done. And for the 2-3 hours home, we ended up losing the game. For the 2 or 3 hours home, John lectured me the whole time. And it was like, I don't know why you did that. This is not how you serve on a team, and all these different things. And to the point where I was like, John, I can't play anymore. I'm not having fun. I'm like, I don't feel a part of this team. I don't, all of these things that was really all about me. It wasn't about the team or what my role was. And I also was taking a class from him at the time. It was like tennis, badminton, pickleball, something like that. And he told me, he said, I don't want to see you in class. I want you to take this time and you go think about this, because you need to come back. And I was like, okay, free time, And one day he said, you need to come back and tell the team, because they're asking why you're not at practice. And I said, I feel like I told the team already. And of course I had, some of my teammates were some of my best friends, and they knew what was going on with me, and they were really upset with me, but they're like, okay, if that's what you're going to do, and they accepted it. And then finally I thought, okay, maybe I just need to go back, and see how I feel. And I remember it was like the day before a game, and John's like, even though you're coming back, don't think that you're going to play tomorrow, And I was like, okay, so I went back, and everyone's like, oh, Sabin, so great to see you. And I thought, okay, this is different. I feel different about this. And then I played the best soccer of my life the rest of the season. So to go from wanting to hang it up in the middle of my senior year, knowing that this was going to be the last, I didn't understand. And I needed to figure out a way out of, being about me, and how can I be part of something bigger. And so I think that me crying on the field and that, 2-0 loss in the last game I've ever played was one of those, moments of, why did I waste that week? It was only a week, but why did I waste that week of playing something that I loved with these girls that I loved? It was a loss. So that's a long answer to part of your question. I was fortunate enough that I actually graduated early from DePauw. Not a lot of people know that, but I graduated December of my senior year. No. So yeah, so I ended up, I graduated early, and I was a Hartman Civic intern, which was supposed to last to May. And I also worked for the admissions office and was a tour guide. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to hang around here for a little bit till I can find a job, because it was so quick. When I think about my last semester of school, I was playing soccer. I had 7 classes. I was a work study student. I was a Hartman Civic intern. I worked as a tour guide on the side because my work study was the admissions office. I had all of these things going on. I had to write my, my senior thesis for senior seminar. Like, I really became an insomniac almost. It was kind of crazy, but I didn't have time to look for a job, and it was kind of a surprise for me. So Stuart Lord, who is no longer there, who was, associate dean and with the, Hartman Civic and Leadership Program, he said, hey, stay on and be an intern. He's like, we'll give you as much experience as you need, use the fax machine, use the phone, and do what you need to do to get a job. And I stuck around till about mid-February, and my sister lived in the Twin Cities, and she went to a liberal arts school up in the Twin Cities, and she said, you should come and move here. You should, there's a ton of grad schools, there's a ton of opportunity, a ton of jobs, lots of young life, whatever. And so literally one day I packed up my car and I drove 10 hours up to the Twin Cities, and I lived in her basement with her and my brother-in-law for a year. And that's when I played for the Lightning. But I didn't really have a lot of time to think about what do I do without soccer, because I was all of a sudden in the real world. And thankfully, when I went to Minnesota, I found soccer friends, in the Minnesota Thunder, and was able to play for the Lightning. And then as I moved home again after that, a year later to Milwaukee, that's when I started coaching right away. I was playing 6 nights a week in bar leagues and whatnot. So soccer was always a part of my life, really, until I had kids.
Meant to be.
Yeah.
So here you go. At 30, you're a regional vice president, which is a pretty big deal. You spent 20 years in not-for-profit, and now you're president, University Health Foundation in San Antonio, Texas. So what drove you to go and spend your career in this industry?
It's funny. I kind of go back to, the wanting to help people in sort of that servant leadership. I feel like one of the things that DePauw did for me, it wasn't really about studying sociology, although it was really interesting to me, and studying people and knowing about people and society and all those types of things, right? I really feel that DePauw taught me how to read well, speak well, and write well. And the rest of it, the content was like, hey, whatever you want to, whatever you're going to enjoy is going to help you do that better. And so I feel like DePauw helped shape me as a leader, and as a conscientious citizen. When I got into fundraising, I started out at Second Harvest Food Bank, which is now Feeding America. And I learned as much as I could there. And then I got into healthcare, and I've been in healthcare ever since. And I think from the healthcare perspective, I feel like everybody needs it. Not everybody has it. And people that do have it, not everybody has the best of it. I think that people deserve it. So, a lot of people are like, oh, would you ever work for the arts, or would you ever, raise money for puppies or things like that? The other thing I learned at DePauw was passion. And, I could never raise money for something that I don't truly have a passion for or understand or believe in. Just like I could not sell you a box of pens because, use the pen. If it works, use it, but I don't have a favorite pen, so whatever. But, when it comes to what I'm trying to, the ideas that I'm trying to, sell to people or give them the opportunity to invest in or make their match because they're looking to do good, that, I'm here to help do that. I think the other part of it is trying to, help people be the best that they can be every day. So when I look at my team, how do I help them grow and help them be, what they can be, help optimize their skills, help them gain new skills, and that's the sort of the leadership side of me. I think, there's really 3 things that I've been good at in life, minus the soccer part, but it's been, coaching and mentoring, strategy, and in fundraising. And so this is a really great role for me My previous role at Advocate Aurora, one of the largest, not-for-profit health systems in the country, I oversaw the fundraising for 9 hospitals, an entire service line, and 150 clinics. That didn't seem like kind of like a lot, but, I still wanted to grow and be challenged. And I was in that role for 8 years out of the 9 years I was there. And I wanted to offer people more.
You talk about that you have to believe in something, you have to have a passion for it. And, when you look at the service and not-for-profits, there's a high burnout rate because it's not 9 to 5. You take a lot of the stuff home with you, and it creates a different level of stress than some other jobs. So in addition to the passion, in addition to the belief in yourself, what as an athlete, what are the things that you learned as an athlete that keep you sane and keep you driven in a high burnout profession?
It's resiliency. I, just kind of like that rheumatologist telling me like, you better not do this. And I was like, tell me I can't and I will, So my grandfather passed away a couple years ago, but prior to that, I used to love going golfing with him. I did not list golf as one of the sports earlier because I am really not a good golfer. I like to ride in the cart, and I got a good short game, but my long game is no. But I used to love riding in the cart with my grandpa because he was a phenomenal storyteller. And I just could never get through a day, not smiling if I was with him, And I just remember asking him, like, Grandpa, you have had such a ridiculously hard life, especially when you look at, he lived to be, 92 years old. And when you look at all the little pieces of his timeline, and although some of them were really fun and cute stories, thinking, oh my gosh, that came out of hardship, and saying like, you had so many reasons to be like angry and upset and depressed and all these things. And, I know you're my grandpa, so you're always supposed to be happy around me, but like now I'm, a 40-something, adult. So tell me, what's your secret? And he said, Sarah, I just choose happiness. I wake up every morning and I choose to be happy. And I'm like, oh gosh, I guess it really is a choice, and that was sort of during this time of me saying like, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? And so I think being able to have some of those life lessons, in sport, as we talked about before, and knowing that, we can't do this alone. We've got to do this together. You've got to, be able to get up when you get knocked down. The resiliency part is really important. And after my grandpa passed, I remember sort of having some time of reflection and saying, what are my values now, and how do I really want to approach life? Because if I don't have that, I'm never going to be able to find myself again. And knowing that for me, it was, my own health, I wasn't taking time to, to have that physical activity every day. I'm one of those people, that's where my outlet is, running or biking or, just beat red in the face, dripping sweat, and doing everything I can. That was a stress reliever for me, and not taking that time for me was hurting me. It's just taking the time to take care of yourself. And so when I sit back and say, okay, that old adage of like, put your oxygen mask on first before you put on somebody else's, I have to check myself every once in a while to make sure, okay, I can't be anything to the people around me if I'm not taking care of myself. And so, again, the competitor in me is like, I've never met a challenge I haven't been able to, overcome, that, may take longer in some cases than others, but, we're going to get through this, or we're going to beat this, or we're going to get, we're going to move on. And then when you feel stuck, going back to those things of, how, is it a different perspective? How are we looking at this? Are we using all of our resources and tools? Because it can't be just me. I can't be the only one that's trying to, make change or promote change. It's trying to, bring the masses along with you.
We've talked about it a little bit throughout the conversation, John Carter and what he meant to you, and you're staying involved with John's legacy and with DePauw through raising some money for a foundation to rename the women's locker room in his honor. Can you talk a little bit about why that's been such an emotional pull for you?
So John sent me my very first recruiting letter, and he saw me at the regional ODP camp. And then he saw me at the IU soccer camp, which back in the 90s, the Indiana University Soccer Camp for Girls was one of the top recruiting camps in the country. I don't know if you remember that, but it was back in the day. So I got a second letter from John thinking I should probably just see where the school is. And we didn't have Google then, so I opened up an atlas at home and I found Greencastle, which is how I found out it was in the middle of corn. And I put the letter aside and I did not entertain it for probably another 6 months. And, he kept calling. And then there was also an admissions counselor at that time who was also a DePauw grad, Brad Simmons, who was from Brookfield, Wisconsin. So he was recruiting me and John was recruiting me. So they were a horrible tag team calling me every week, finally got me there to visit. And I think a lot of ways, John taught me a lot of those big lessons that I learned. I've always really respected all the coaches that I've had. But John, he taught us a lot of, really hard lessons. And I think for me, part of it was learning my role on the team. And John helped me understand that a little bit more because, as I mentioned, a lot of my learning opportunities on that team was when I was always looking inward and it was about me and I wasn't thinking about the team. And so to learn some of those hard lessons, I remember my senior year, I was never the captain of the team. Two of my favorite people in the world, Kristen Kinney and Adrian Hoos, were our captains my senior year. And I remember being like, why doesn't the team want me to lead them? Why didn't they choose me as their captain? I've been like this dutiful, player and teammate all these years, but they don't see me as a leader. And I remember being so hurt by that. And again, why was this all about me? And so John later that season named me to the Student Athletic Advisory Board, which that was the year that we decided to leave the ICAC. And I was a part of that decision. And even though we were winning the ICAC every year, it was no competition for us. Like we needed to leave for women's soccer to be a more competitive program. And I remember it being a really hard decision for some of the teams, but that was John's way of saying, no, Sabin, you are doing good things for this team and you are a leader in a different way and you can express that in a different way. And so he gave me the space I needed to, get out of my own self and my own head and be something bigger.
Okay, last couple questions. What is still on your bucket list?
I don't really have these big bucket list dreams because, I think I'm just trying to live life to the fullest now, which again is a little sort of cliche-ish, but I think, making sure that I can, support my kids as they grow, growing old with my husband, all those types of things I think are, things that are on my bucket list, which are just, kind of living out life and thinking about my grandpa and choosing happiness. And, choosing happiness doesn't mean that I have to touch every ocean or go to every continent. I'm not a daredevil person. I don't think I'm going to skydive. I don't think I'm going to bungee jump off some crazy bridge. I'm not that person at all. I think it's just sort of the simpler things in life and just trying to enjoy the time and the moments that you're in instead of searching for that one that you can get to someday.
Love it. Okay, final question. Best advice that you remember that you ever got from a coach?
Oh, from a coach. So my high school coach used to always say, keep it simple, stupid. And so he would always say, you better kiss that, and I'm like, yeah. So, but over time, I think the more, as I've talked through this time with you, it's been more about uncomplicating my life and keeping it simple, and going back to the things that are most important to you. And so as much as, he was talking about don't try to do these difficult things with the ball and run through all these people and make that work, again, it transfers over into life of, just keep it simple and, understand who you are and what you're going to do with yourself. I think when I think about all the other advice There was super specific things, from each of my coaches. I had another coach that said, look at the field, what do you see and what path are you going to take? For me, again, that's just taking a step back and take a look. And again, in that moment of time, he was like, look, there's 3 players over there and there's 1 over there. Where are you going to go with the ball? Keep it simple, but this is a different coach saying, take a step back and look, what are you going to do with it? And, again, you have to kind of set yourself back and you take a step back and what does it look like to you, and pick your path.
Awesome. This has been a great conversation. Absolutely great conversation. Sara Sabin Alger, thank you so much for your time, and congratulations on being the newest inductee to the DePauw Athletics Hall of Fame.
Thank you so much, Brad. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate all the sentiments from everyone, and just feel honored that you guys chose me.